Welcome back to Night's Embrace, another quiet journey into story and shadow, into legend told softly, so you may drift, may rest, may let your mind wander as dusk settles around you. Tonight we follow the tale of a queen shrouded in twilight, a queen whose eyes glowed with gloam, and whose power was said to slay even gods themselves. She is remembered only as the Gloam-Eyed Queen, a name spoken like a whisper, half forgotten, half feared, and yet still carrying weight in the hearts of those who tell her story. Her tale drifts between myth and memory, between fire and silence, and though her fate remains unknown, her shadow lingers still. In this calm telling, we will wander through her story together, not as scholars with books in hand, but as listeners at the edge of firelight. We will hear how she was chosen by higher powers, how she turned from golden grace to twilight flame, how she nurtured her apostles in ways both terrible and tender, and how she dared to unmake the lie of immortality. Even if you have never walked the paths of the lands between, you will find here something timeless. This is a tale of endings and beginnings, of dusk following day, of the inevitability of rest. So let your breath soften, let your body grow heavy, and allow the legend of the queen who killed gods to guide you into sleep. And before we begin, I would love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Whisper it softly in the comments if you'd like. I read them all, and I'm always amazed at how far these stories travel, from dusk to dawn, from one corner of the world to another. Now, settle in. The tale begins. Chapter 1. The Golden Order and the Shadow of Death. The lands between. A world bathed in the golden radiance of the Erd tree. Imagine standing at its roots, looking upward and seeing that vast trunk pierce the heavens. Its branches glow with a light that never fades, a light that falls upon every corner of the realm. To the people of that time, the Erd tree was not simply a symbol, it was law, it was destiny, it was the promise that life would endure forever beneath its boughs. The Erd tree's light was more than warmth or beauty. It was order. It was the physical expression of the Elden Ring, the great rune that defined the rules of existence itself. In those golden days, the Erd tree stood as the vessel of an eternal age, a living monument to permanence. And yet, permanence is rarely kind. At the heart of this order sat Queen Maliketh, a divine figure chosen by the greater will. She was God and guardian, sovereign and priestess, the one who carried the burden of shaping the fate of her people, and in her hands rested the most terrible of powers, the power to alter the Elden Ring itself. It was she who reached into that great mystery, unspooling one of its essential laws and removing it altogether. The law she plucked away was called destined death. Destined death was not cruelty, it was balance. It was the silent thread woven into the fabric of the world, ensuring that no life, no matter how radiant, could last forever. With it, mortals passed into rest, and even gods knew their time would one day end. Without it, existence became eternal, and eternity came with consequences. Maliketh sealed destined death away, placing its essence into the safekeeping of her loyal shadow, Maliketh. From that moment, no god could truly die. No demigod would ever fade. The cycle of endings was broken. Immortality became the new law of the world. And while some celebrated, praising the gift of endless life, others began to see the shadows creeping in at the edges of golden light. Think of it, a battlefield where warriors fall, yet their souls do not rest, a temple where prayers are offered to ancestors who never truly depart, but linger unseen, unable to move on, a throne room where rulers cannot die, and thus cannot be replaced, clinging to power not for decades, but for centuries. The Erd tree promised glory, but beneath its branches, time grew stagnant. Immortality is not mercy, it is a weight. Without death, the cycle of renewal falters. Forests choke under their own roots, rivers lose their course, and so too did the people of the lands between feel the press of something unnatural. They may not have spoken of it in open words, but the silence in their hearts knew something was missing, something essential. And in that silence, stories began to grow, stories of twilight, of gloaming skies, where the golden light dimmed, stories of eyes that glowed not with sunlight, nor with starlight, but with the fading fire that comes between. It was said that one among the chosen, one among the Empyreans, did not see the banishment of death as a triumph, but as a wound. The Empyreans, they were not ordinary beings. They were rare, singular, marked by the greater will through its agents, the two fingers. To be chosen as Empyrean was to be placed upon a path of godhood. To the Empyrean was meant to be a vessel, a candidate who might replace Maliketh herself, should the need ever arise. Rennie was such a one, so too were Melania and Michaela, golden twins of divine blood, but their stories come later. Long before them, there was another Empyrean, chosen in shadow. Her name is not known, only her title remains, the Gloam-Eyed Queen. The title speaks for itself. Gloam, the fading light of dusk, the breath between day and night. Her eyes were said to shine with that dim fire, unsettling to behold, for to look into them was to feel the truth of endings. In a world that had forgotten death, her gaze was a reminder that even the brightest flame cannot burn forever. Chosen she was, yes, but chosen does not always mean obedient. Where the two fingers pointed her towards service, she turned aside. Where the greater will shone with gold, she found herself drawn instead to something darker, older, and far less forgiving. It is whispered that she discovered the black flame, a fire born from destined death itself. How she came to possess it is a mystery. Some say it was stolen, others suggest it was gifted by a god unseen, an outer god whose will opposed the Golden Order. Whatever its source, the black flame became hers, and through it she would define her rebellion. The black flame was not ordinary fire. It did not blaze to warm. It did not burn to illuminate. It consumed, slowly, cruelly, reaching past flesh to sear the soul itself. When it touched a being marked by immortality, it stripped away that false eternity. Gods could be wounded, demigods could be slain. The unthinkable became possible. Imagine the terror of those first moments. A divine figure, certain of eternal life, struck down by a flame that whispered of endings. Imagine the awe of those who witnessed it, mortals seeing gods bleed, watching immortality crumble. To the faithful, it was heresy. To the weary, it was deliverance. To the queen herself, it was simply truth. In that truth, the Gloam-Eyed Queen began to gather followers, not many at first, just a handful of those who had grown disillusioned with the Erd tree's promises. A soldier who had watched comrades linger, broken but unyielding, unable to die. A priest who had prayed for release, yet found none. A wanderer who had seen ghosts cling to the edges of the world, never finding peace. To them, the Queen's flame was not a curse, but a gift, and she welcomed them. But hers was not the warmth of a gentle mother. She embraced her followers in ways both grotesque and sacred. She would wrap them in swaddling cloth, woven not from fabric but from skin, a ritual of belonging, a baptism into her cause. To those outside, it was abhorrent. To those within, it was family. She did not call them soldiers, she called them children, and in her arms, they believed they had found purpose. Her children became known as the Godskin Apostles. They stretched and twisted, their bodies altered by the flame they served. Some grew tall and gaunt, wielding twin blades with merciless speed. Others grew swollen and corpulent, their girth becoming a weapon in itself. Always they dressed in pale robes, stitched from the hides of the divine, and always their eyes glowed with devotion. The queen's flame grew brighter with each follower, each ritual, each whispered vow, but it was not brightness in the sense of light. It was brightness like a wound, like a scar across the world. Wherever she walked, whispers followed, a temple emptied, a shrine desecrated, a god's name struck from prayer. The age of golden permanence had been challenged, and the challenge came from gloaming eyes. The Golden Order looked upon this with horror. To them, the Gloam-Eyed Queen was no Empyrean at all, but a heretic, a traitor, a shadow meant to be erased. They saw only the grotesque, the blasphemy, the desecration. They could not see the wound their own law had opened. They could not see the stagnation creeping in. They could not see the stillness that spread like rot beneath their golden light. But the queen saw it, and she named it, and she promised her children that the gods who clung to eternity would not endure forever. She did not speak in anger. She did not shout. She whispered, calm, steady, inevitable, like twilight itself. And in that whisper, her children found faith. The tale of the Gloam-Eyed Queen begins then. In contrast to the Erdtree's golden perfection, hers is the story of dusk rising against day, of balance asserting itself against control. She did not need armies of mortals. She had her apostles, she had her flame, she had her certainty. And so the age of the god hunt loomed closer. But before that hunt could begin, the world had to understand immortality was never a gift. It was a chain, and the queen who carried twilight in her eyes held the key that could break it. Chapter 2. The birth of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. The gloaming, that quiet hour between day and night when the world holds its breath. It is in that liminal space, where shadows stretch long and the light grows thin, that legends place the birth of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. She did not arrive in splendor, nor descend in golden brilliance. Her presence was quieter, more unsettling. To speak of her beginning is to speak of dusk itself, gentle, inevitable, and impossible to resist. Those who wrote of her, long after the fact, described her eyes before anything else. They were said to shine with a light, unlike the Erdtree's gold or the moon's pale glow. Her gaze carried the dim fire of twilight, a strange and unnerving gleam that seemed to drink in light rather than cast it. To meet her stare was to feel endings creep near, not the violence of sudden death, but the slow certainty of dusk overtaking the horizon. Her eyes told truths the Erdtree had tried to bury. They reminded all who looked upon her that no flame burns forever, no tree grows endlessly, no god sits eternally upon a throne. Chosen she was, marked by the two fingers, as an Empyrean. The role of an Empyrean was both exaltation and burden. They were candidates, vessels, prepared in case the greater will required a new god to shape the order of the world. The two fingers whispered their blessings, pointing her toward a destiny of obedience, but she did not bend. She listened, she acknowledged, and then she turned away. Why she strayed from the path laid before her is unknown. Perhaps she sensed the hollowness in the Golden Order's perfection. Perhaps she had seen too much of this stagnation that spread beneath the Erd tree's light. Perhaps she was simply drawn to truths the greater will feared. Whatever the reason, her steps carried her away from the golden road and into darker places, and in those shadows, she discovered the flame that would define her, the black flame. The black flame was no ordinary fire. It flickered low, as if caught between burning and dying. Its color was the color of charred, of soot, of ember fading to ash. But within its subdued glow lay a power greater than any golden radiance. For this flame carried the essence of destined death, the very rune Marika had stripped from the Elden Ring and hidden away, where golden fire sanctified and preserved, black fire consumed, corroded, and reduced even the divine to nothing. To wield it was to hold in your hand the inevitability of endings. How the queen came to possess it is still shrouded in rumor. Some whisper she stole it from Maliketh himself, slipping past his watchful guard to sip from the very wellspring of death. Others believe the black flame was a gift, bestowed by an unseen outer god, one who despised the Erd tree's tyranny of immortality. A few suggest she was not given the flame, nor did she steal it, but that she simply called to it, and death answered. In myth, such things are possible. In truth, what matters most is that she wielded it, and with it, she was transformed. She carried a great sword, vast and heavy, into which she poured the black flame. Its blade shimmered with a glow that was less light than shadow, a heat that was less warmth than withering. Each stroke left behind a faint trail of darkness, like the fading of the sun's last rays across the sky. With this sword, the Gloam-Eyed Queen was no longer simply an Empyrean. She was something more, an instrument of endings, a herald of mortality's return. But she was not alone. Around her gathered those who saw in her flame a truth they could not deny. Soldiers weary of endless battle, priests whose prayers to the Erd tree went unanswered, wanderers haunted by the sight of spirits who never found peace. They came to her, one by one, drawn like moths, not to golden fire, but to the dim glow of twilight, and she accepted them. Yet her acceptance was no ordinary welcome. The Gloam-Eyed Queen marked her followers in ways that seemed both grotesque and sacred. She wrapped them in cloth stitched from skin, a swaddling born of the dead. She cradled them as a mother might, holding them close, whispering softly of the purpose they now carried. Her love was not gentle, but it was real, fierce, consuming, and absolute. Those who entered her embrace did not emerge unchanged. They became her apostles. These apostles were known as the Godskins. To the outside world, they appeared horrific, figures cloaked in pale robes, sewn from patches of flesh, their bodies twisted by inhuman transformations. Some grew tall and thin, their limbs stretching unnaturally, wielding twin blades with frightening precision. Others grew bloated, their flesh swelling until their very bulk became a weapon. Their forms seemed unstable, as if shaped less by nature than by some primordial chaos. And in truth, they were, for the black flame warped them, breaking down the rigid forms of the Golden Order, returning them to something older, something closer to the crucible, when all life mingled in unshaped potential. To the faithful of the Erd tree, the Godskins were monsters. To the queen, they were children. She called them newborns, wrapped them in the swaddling cloth of death, and whispered to them that they would one day become the death of the gods. Her words became lullabies, her rituals baptisms. In her presence, they did not feel cursed. They felt chosen. And so the Gloam-Eyed Queen stood at the center of this strange, terrible family. She, the mother of twilight. They, her skin-clad brood. Together they formed a new creed, one not bound to golden law, but to the inevitability of endings. It was not cruelty that united them, it was certainty, for the Queen taught them that the gods who claimed eternity had stolen something vital from the world. They had denied the natural cycle, and she, with her apostles, would restore it. Her birth as queen, then, was not marked by a coronation, nor by a temple's blessing. It was marked by her first gathering of followers, her first wrapping of the swaddling cloth, her first whisper that the gods could be slain. From those quiet beginnings rose a legend that would shake the very foundations of the Golden Order. The Gloam-Eyed Queen was no longer simply an Empyrean chosen by the Two Fingers. She was something far more dangerous. She was the twilight's answer to the Erd-tree's eternal day, and in her eyes burned the promise that death, though banished, had not been destroyed. It waited, it lingered, and through her it would return. Chapter 3. The Godskin Apostles. They were called the Godskins, a name that carried both reverence and horror. Apostles and nobles alike. They were the children of the Gloam-Eyed Queen, born not of flesh and blood, but of faith, ritual, and black flame. Their existence was a secret made visible, a whisper turned into a scream. Wherever they walked, fear followed, and yet, in the Queen's eyes, they were not monsters. They were her brood, her beloved, the proof of her defiance against the Golden Order. Imagine them in your mind, tall, gaunt figures draped in robes stitched from pale skin, each seam a scar, each patch a reminder of the divinity they had hunted. Their garments were not symbols, they were trophies, relics of a rebellion against eternity. The apostles were thin, almost impossibly so, their limbs stretched beyond human proportion. They wielded twin blades with a terrible grace, striking faster than the eye could follow. Their forms bent and elongated, as if bones were liquid, bodies reshaping in ways that recalled the crucible, that ancient time when life had not yet settled into boundaries. Beside them stood the nobles, swollen, corpulent, their forms grotesque with excess, their flesh rolled and bulged, yet within that bulk lay dreadful power. They swayed as they walked, but when roused, their bodies expanded further, inflating with unholy vigor until they could crush foes beneath their sheer mass. Their size was not weakness, but weapon, their corpulence a manifestation of the flame that consumed them from within. And always, their robes, stitched together from countless fragments of skin, the faces of the dead, stretched thin across fabric, their pale hues glowing faintly in the firelight. The apostles and nobles together formed the family of the Queen. They were not soldiers in the ordinary sense. They did not march in disciplined lines, nor fight under banners of state. They were zealots, disciples, and children, bound not by law, but by devotion. And devotion, when sharpened by black flame, was a weapon sharper than any blade. The Queen nurtured them in ways both tender and terrible. She called them her newborns, swaddling them in cloth sewn from skin. To outsiders, this was grotesque, a perversion of motherhood, but to those within her embrace, it was sacred. The swaddling cloth was not an insult to life, but a recognition of death as part of life's fabric. She cradled them in her arms, whispering words of comfort and purpose. In her lullabies, they found strength. In her silence, they found belonging. She was their mother of twilight, and they her children of endings. The Godskins bore golden eyes, a strange and cruel irony. Their gaze shimmered with the same grace that flowed from the tree they despised. Some whispered that this was the mark of the gods they had slain, absorbed into their flesh as they donned the skins of their prey. Others believed it was a trace of the greater will itself, unable to be fully cast off, clinging stubbornly even to heretics. Whatever the truth, those glowing eyes gave them an unsettling air. Saints of death who still carried the light of the order they opposed. Their powers were inhuman. The apostles could twist their bodies, elongating arms and torsos in ways that defied reason. They moved like serpents, coiling and striking, or like shadows stretched by firelight. The nobles inflated grotesquely, rolling with unstoppable force, crushing whatever stood in their path. Their very flesh seemed unbound by natural law, echoing the primordial crucible where form had not yet hardened. The black flame had loosened the rigidity of their being, freeing them to become both less and more than human. To see them was to see blasphemy made flesh, yet to the queen, each distortion, each grotesque mutation was beauty, for in their twisted forms she saw truth, that the rigid order of the Golden Age was an illusion, that beneath the surface all life was mutable, mortal, and destined to end. Her children embodied that truth, wearing death on their sleeves, carrying inevitability in every movement. The world trembled at their presence. Villages abandoned themselves at the sight of their pale robes, shrines emptied, their idols desecrated or burned in black fire. Priests whispered prayers, not of devotion, but of desperation, begging the tree for protection against the skin-clad brood. The apostles became phantoms of fear, their very name a warning, and yet, for some, they were also salvation. There were those who had grown weary of endless life, who looked upon the apostles not as monsters, but as deliverers. To such souls, the sight of robes stitched from skin was not horror, but hope. These people believed that through death lay peace, that only by breaking the chains of immortality could rest be found. And so, in the hidden corners of the world, some welcomed the apostles. They opened doors, offered shelter, whispered their own prayers to the Gloam-Eyed Queen. For them, the grotesque became holy. The Godskins were not aimless wanderers. They had purpose, sharpened by their queen's hand. She whispered to them that they were to be the death of gods. Every robe they stitched, every ritual they performed, every blade they raised was in service to that singular goal. They were not merely her followers, they were her instruments, the sharpened edges of her defiance. It is said that their rites were unsettling to witness. In dark caverns and abandoned temples, they gathered around altars draped in pale cloth. They chanted in low voices, their words half prayer, half moan, carried on the flicker of black fire. They moved as one, their bodies twisting unnaturally, as if the flame within them pulsed to a rhythm beyond mortal hearing. And at the center of these rites was always the queen, her gloaming eyes watching, her great sword planted before her, the black flame dancing along its edge. The apostles would kneel before her, their robes fluttering in the heat of the flame. She would extend her hands, placing the swaddling cloth upon them, blessing them in death's embrace. And as the ritual ended, they rose renewed, not stronger in flesh, but deeper in faith. To them it was not madness, it was motherhood. They were not cursed, they were chosen. To the tree's faithful, the Godskins were the gravest of heresies. They desecrated the image of the divine, flaunted the promise of eternity, and mocked the order that had held the world in place. But heresy has a power of its own. In every age, in every faith, there are those who look upon the forbidden and see not corruption, but truth. The Godskins embodied that forbidden truth. They were the walking denial of immortality, the reminder that even gods could be unmade. The apostles spread slowly at first, in whispers and shadows, but as the queen's flame grew, so too did their numbers. Each god that fell fed their purpose. Each divine skin flayed became another patch in their vestments, another mark of their progress. They were patient, deliberate, and utterly devoted, and as their presence grew, so too did the dread that haunted the Golden Order. It is said that the apostles never laughed, never wept. Their devotion burned away such things, leaving only the quiet certainty of their purpose. When they struck, it was without hesitation. When they killed, it was without cruelty. Their violence was not the chaos of bandits, nor the fury of warlords. It was ritual, solemn and measured, a sacrament in flesh and fire. In this way, they were more terrifying than any beast, for beasts kill to feed, and men kill for power, but the apostles killed for truth. And what truth did they carry? That death is not an end, but a release. That life without death is no blessing. That the Erdtree's promise of eternity was a chain, and that only by breaking it could the world be whole again. Thus the Godskin Apostles grew from rumor into reality, from shadows into substance. They were the Queen's greatest creation, her living defiance against a world bound by false permanence. And as their pale robes spread across the land, the stage was set for what would follow: the God Hunt, the great rebellion that would shake the foundations of the Golden Order itself. Chapter 4. The God Hunt begins. The God Hunt. Those words drift through the ruins of the lands between like smoke. Few dare to speak them openly. To some, they are a memory of terror. To others, a half-forgotten song of rebellion. But in the age when the Gloam-Eyed Queen walked among her children, the God Hunt was no rumor, it was reality. The Queen's apostles were ready. Their swaddling cloth was bound tight. Their robes were patched anew, each seam stitched with the pale remnants of divinity. Their weapons gleamed in the flicker of black flame, blades tempered not with steel alone, but with faith. And behind them stood their queen, tall and still, her great sword planted in the earth, its edge breathing with a dark, hungry glow. She looked upon her brood with gloaming eyes, and they looked back as infants to a mother. Then she whispered the words that set the world aflame. The gods are not eternal, they too can fall. And so began the hunt. They did not move like armies. There were no banners raised, no horns announcing their arrival. The God Hunt spread like shadow at dusk, quiet, inexorable, unstoppable. In distant shrines, the first divine figures fell. A minor saint, struck down in the silence of prayer. A demigod heir, proud in golden armor, suddenly writhing as black fire gnawed at his spirit. Their names are forgotten, lost to time, but in that moment, their deaths echoed louder than thunder, for the unthinkable had happened. Immortals had died. The people of the lands between whispered in fear. To them, the gods were the pillars of existence, the unshakable keepers of order. If even they could fall, then nothing was secure. Yet among those who suffered beneath the Erdtree's promise of eternity, there were murmurs of hope. Some looked upon the Queen's hunt and saw release, saw the return of something natural, something right. Others hid, torn between fear of her flame and longing for her truth. The apostles carried the hunt forward with devotion, They were not marauders, taking lives at random. Each death was chosen, deliberate, a message carved into the world. When an apostle's twin blade sliced through divine flesh, when a noble rolled crushingly over the body of a god, it was ritual. The body was flayed, the skin harvested, the robes patched anew. Each piece of flesh, sewn into their garments, was not only proof of victory, but a sacrament, a reminder stitched into their very being that even gods bleed, even gods fall. Temples grew empty. Where once priests sang hymns to golden light, now silence reigned. Some temples burned, their sanctuaries consumed in black fire. Others remained, their altars smeared with soot, their idols cracked, the faint smell of char lingering long after the queen's brood had departed. The god hunt left no corner untouched. In every region of the lands between, whispers spread, the queen is coming. The queen whose eyes carry dusk, the queen whose sword carries death. And yet, not all wept. There were those who began to see her, not as destroyer, but as liberator. For centuries they had lived beneath the weight of eternity. Their ancestors did not pass into rest. Their lords and masters clung to power without end. Their prayers for release went unanswered. To them, the queen's flame was terrifying. Yes, but it was also hope. Hope that the cycle might be restored, that death might return as a mercy. These quiet voices did not speak loudly, for fear of the Erd-tree's wrath, but in the shadows, some welcomed the god hunt. The Golden Order trembled. Never before had their supremacy been challenged so directly. The Erd-tree's grace was meant to be absolute, the promise of immortality unbreakable, but the queen had broken it. With every divine death, with every skin stitched, with every flame lit, she proved that the order's foundation was cracked. The two fingers, once so confident, fell into uneasy silence. The faithful looked to their gods for protection, and some gods fell silent themselves, too fearful to face the queen's brood. Still, the god hunt grew bolder. The apostles marched into great halls where divine bloodlines had feasted. Nobles inflated their grotesque forms, rolling through chambers, crushing golden knights as if they were reeds before a flood. Apostles stretched unnaturally, their limbs lashing out, their blades cutting through immortal flesh as easily as through air. And behind them, always, the black flame burned, not like a raging inferno, but like a steady wound, a fire that ate slowly, cruelly, leaving even the mightiest gods weakened and afraid. It is said that when the queen herself raised her sword, the world fell silent. The great blade, once merely steel, shimmered with the power of destined death. Each strike was not only physical, but spiritual. Gods who faced her felt their souls unraveling even as they lifted their weapons. Their bodies grew heavy, their limbs faltered. The golden blessing of the Erd-tree could not shield them against her twilight flame. Divinity itself cracked, and so the god hunt carved its path through history. It was not endless, it was not aimless, it was deliberate, measured, inevitable. The queen's brood moved like dusk creeping across the sky, slow, steady, but impossible to halt. In the eyes of the Golden Order, the hunt was blasphemy. They called her a heretic, a usurper, a threat to all life. To them she was not restoring balance, but plunging the world into chaos. Yet the queen did not rage. She did not shout. She moved with calm certainty. She did not seek chaos. She sought truth. And truth, when wielded against false eternity, was sharp enough to cut gods down. But no rebellion can last forever without answer. And the Golden Order had an answer. For while many gods feared and many hid, one remained steadfast. one who had been entrusted with the very essence the queen had stolen, one whose loyalty to Marika was absolute. Maliketh, the Black Blade, the shadow of Marika, the guardian of destined death. He would not allow the god hunt to continue. The queen's victories had been many, her children had grown bold, but in the distance beyond the pale flicker of black fire, the sound of claws upon stone began to echo. The loyal beast of the Erdtree was stirring. The clash between queen and shadow was approaching. The god hunt had begun, but the tale of its end was already written in whispers. Chapter 5. Maliketh the Black Blade. Every queen who dares to rise against the order of gods must face a champion. For the Gloam-Eyed Queen, that champion was Maliketh. He was more than a warrior. He was oath made flesh, half beast, half knight, shadow-bound, and sworn to Queen Marika with a loyalty deeper than any mortal vow. In his keeping lay the most dangerous secret of the world, the fragment of the Elden Ring known as destined death, sealed away, bound within his black blade. Where others whispered of it, he bore it. Where others feared it, he carried it. Maliketh was not only the guardian of death, he was its prison. When the god hunt began, when temples burned in divine blood stained pale robes, it was Maliketh who moved to meet it. He could not ignore the queen. Her black flame was no mere rebellion, no small heresy to be stamped out. It was death itself, unchained, wielded by an Empyrean who had turned away from grace. She had taken the forbidden power he swore to guard and made it her own. She was not only a threat to the Golden Order, she was a mirror of everything he was meant to contain. The stories of their meeting vary. Some claim they clashed upon a battlefield strewn with fallen apostles, their twisted bodies stretching and breaking in desperation as they tried to defend their mother. Others say they met in a temple, the queen's sword planted before a blackened altar, Maliketh stepping silently into the firelight, his blade already humming with shadow. A few imagine the battle at the roots of the Erdtree itself, golden light streaming down upon black fire and black steel. The place matters little. What matters is the clash, inevitable, absolute. The queen was not afraid. She stood tall, her gloaming eyes calm, her great sword burning with the flame that gnawed even at divinity. Her children circled her, chanting low, their robes fluttering in the breath of the black fire. Maliketh, by contrast, was silent. He did not speak, for there was no need. His presence was vow enough. He was the shadow of Marika, the hand of the Golden Order, the one who would not fail. When they struck, the world held its breath. The queen's great sword carved arcs of twilight fire, each swing tearing at the very soul of the earth. The black flame hissed, clinging to the air, burning long after her blade had passed. Maliketh answered with the black blade, the prison of destined death. His strikes rang like tolling bells, each blow an oath, each spark a fragment of eternity colliding with twilight. Where her fire consumed, his steel restrained. Where her flame unbound, his blade resealed. The apostles tried to hold him back. They stretched their limbs, lashing at him like serpents. They rolled their bloated bodies, seeking to crush him under their grotesque forms. But Maliketh was fury sharpened into purpose. His claws ripped through cloth and skin. His blade cut down apostles like wheat before the scythe. For every follower who fell, another stepped forward, desperate to shield their queen. Their devotion was unmatched, but devotion is no armor against destiny. At the heart of it all, the queen and Maliketh circled one another. Her flame crackled, dim and hungry, a reminder of endings. His blade glowed with a sealed rune, a reminder of duty. She struck with certainty, calm as dusk descending. He struck with rage, fierce as a vow that cannot be broken. Black flame met black steel, and in that collision, the air itself seemed to wail. The queen was formidable. Her power was not illusion. She had slain gods, toppled saints, unmade the lie of eternity. Her sword had burned immortals to ash, and yet Maliketh was something else. He was not merely a warrior, he was the vessel of death itself. His blade did not simply resist her fire, it consumed it, absorbing the very essence of what she wielded, binding it once more to his oath. With every clash, her flame dimmed. With every strike, her certainty wavered. Still, she did not falter in spirit. She whispered to him, even in the midst of battle, that his oath was a chain, that death could not be sealed away forever, that one day even his blade would break, and the world would know endings again. Her voice was steady, carrying across the clash of steel, calm as twilight. Maliketh answered not with words but with a roar that shook stone and sky alike. His loyalty was absolute. His silence was refusal. He would not betray Marika. He would not betray his vow. The duel stretched on, black fire and black steel locked in terrible rhythm. The apostles fell one by one, their bodies twisting into final shapes, their robes fluttering in the heat of the dying flame. The queen's great sword grew heavier, the black flame sputtered, dimming under Maliketh's relentless assault, and at last, with one final strike, Maliketh's blade cut deep. The queen staggered, her sword fell from her grasp, embedding in the earth. Her gloaming eyes still glowed, but faintly, their light waning like the last rays of sunset. Silence followed. The god hunt ended in that stillness. What became of her in that moment? None can say for certain. Some claim Maliketh slew her outright, her body consumed by the very fire she had wielded. Others whisper he bound her, sealing her away as Marika commanded, hidden from the world so her eyes would never again see dusk. And some believe she slipped away, diminished but not destroyed, her fate deliberately left unspoken. For in Elden Ring's world, silence often hides truths too dangerous to name. What we do know is this: Maliketh prevailed. The Gloam-Eyed Queen's god hunt was broken. The flame that had once slain gods was dimmed, its true strength bound again within Maliketh's blade. The Golden Order endured, and death, for a time, was sealed once more. Yet though she fell, the memory of that clash lingered. The apostles who survived whispered her name in shadows, their robes heavy with the weight of failure, but still stitched with devotion. The faithful of the Erd-tree told stories of her defeat, warning children of the heretic queen who dared to slay gods, and in hidden corners, others whispered something different, that twilight had not ended, only retreated, that the gloam waits always for day to fade. Chapter 6. Sealing Death Away. When the clash was finished, when the black flame dimmed, and the queen no longer stood, Maliketh did what he had always been bound to do. He did not celebrate. He did not boast. He simply returned to his duty. For Maliketh was not a creature of triumph. He was a creature of oath, and his oath was to guard destined death. The power the queen had wielded, the very flame that had unmade gods, could not be left free in the world. Already it had shaken the foundations of the Golden Order. Already it had shown that immortality was a fragile lie. Marika commanded, and Maliketh obeyed. The essence of death, once spilled into the hands of the Gloam-Eyed Queen, was gathered up and sealed again, bound not in chains of iron, but in the body and blade of the beast who had always carried it. Maliketh reforged his weapon, the Black Blade, to hold that rune more tightly than before. Its edge drank the light around it, heavy with the weight of endings. Within its steel pulsed the very essence of mortality, and Maliketh swore, with all the strength of his body and all the fury of his soul, that death would never again escape his keeping. The Golden Order, shaken though it was, found its footing once more. The Erd-tree still gleamed, its light still bathed the lands between, and the faithful told themselves that all was well. The heretic queen had been defeated, the black flame had been dimmed, death had been chained again. They spoke these words like prayers, trying to convince themselves that the wound had truly healed, but the scars remained. The Godskin Apostles, once fierce and unyielding, were scattered, their numbers were broken, their faith wounded, yet they did not vanish. In caverns, in ruined chapels, in hollow towers at the edges of the world, they lingered, they whispered their prayers, not to the Erd-tree, but to the memory of their queen. They wrapped the swaddling cloth around themselves, cradling their devotion in rituals both grotesque and sacred. Their forms still stretched, their robes still fluttered with pale seams, their twin blades still sang. The god hunt had ended, but the hunger for divinity's death did not die. Those who stumbled upon the apostles in the years that followed often spoke of terror. Imagine wandering into a forgotten cave, only to see figures cloaked in skin, chanting softly before an altar of bone. Imagine the flicker of black fire on the walls, shadows stretching unnaturally, the air heavy with whispers. Some escaped to tell the tale, many did not, and so the Godskins became more legend than reality, phantoms of fear, spoken of in hushed tones, reminders that the Queen's shadow had not entirely faded. The Queen's great sword, too, was sealed away. It was not destroyed, for even the Golden Order feared to unmake it. Instead, it was locked within a divine tower, hidden and guarded, a relic of an age that was best forgotten. Those who saw it said its blade still shimmered faintly with black flame, as though the Queen's hand lingered upon it, even in absence. To wield it was forbidden, to even speak of it was dangerous, and yet the sword remained, a silent memory, waiting. The Order's scribes worked quickly to erase the rebellion from record. The god hunt was named heresy. The Queen's followers condemned as monsters. Temples were rebuilt, their altars cleansed, their idols re-sanctified. In public words, in holy prayers, the age of twilight was declared a mistake, an aberration. The faithful told their children that the Queen had been nothing more than a traitor, a shadow who dared to rise against the light of the Erd-tree, and in time, memory dulled, but not completely. Whispers still drifted, whispers of a queen who had slain gods, whispers of apostles who wore skin as vestments, whispers of a flame that even immortality could not withstand. Such whispers could never be fully stamped out, for those who had seen the god hunt with their own eyes carried its memory in their hearts, and hearts do not forget so easily. Marika herself remained silent. She had ordered death sealed away, and it was done. Yet some wondered if even she felt unease, for she, more than anyone, understood what it meant to unmake the natural order. She had plucked death from the Elden Ring with her own hands. She had cut endings from the fabric of the world, and in doing so she had created the void the Queen had filled. Perhaps Marika saw in the Queen not only rebellion, but reflection. Still, the Erd-tree shone. Its golden light poured across the lands between, as though nothing had changed. Festivals were held, hymns were sung, priests declared the age of grace unbroken, but beneath the roots of the tree, shadows lingered. Beneath the hymns, silence stirred. For those who remembered, the gloaming eyes of their queen haunted their dreams, a reminder that death could never be banished forever. Maliketh himself grew harsher, more vigilant. His duty had always weighed upon him, but now it pressed like chains. The fear of failure burned within him. He had defeated the queen, yes, but her rebellion proved how fragile his oath truly was. He carried death within his blade, and so long as he lived, the world would be spared its touch. Yet deep inside, perhaps he knew, oaths can be broken, blades can be shattered, and death, though sealed, waits. The sealing of destined death was not an ending, it was a pause, a holding of breath. A silence stretched too long, and in that silence, the lands between continued, outwardly golden, inwardly uneasy. The god hunt was over, the queen had fallen, but her shadow stretched on. Chapter 7. The Queen Sep's Fate and Theories. The god hunt had ended. The queen had fallen, but her story did not close with certainty. In the lands between, silence often speaks louder than words, and when it comes to the fate of the Gloam-Eyed Queen, silence is all we are given. No tomb bears her name, no monument marks her fall. Her body is not displayed as a warning, nor enshrined as a relic. Instead, she vanishes from history as if swallowed whole by the dusk she embodied. Some believe Maliketh slew her outright. They imagine the moment of her defeat, her great sword falling from her hands, her body consumed by the very black flame she once commanded. To these voices, her end was fitting, death by the fire of death itself. Her ashes, they say, scattered into the twilight winds, leaving nothing behind but whispers. If this is true, then hers was a final and absolute fall, but absolutes are rare in the lands between. Others whisper a different tale. They say Maliketh did not kill her, but bound her, that Marika herself demanded it, for the Gloam-Eyed Queen was still an Empyrean, still chosen, still marked as one who might ascend to godhood. Killing her may have been too dangerous, or perhaps too costly. And so, in these whispered tales, she was imprisoned, locked away in some hidden vault beneath the Ur-tree, sealed where her gloaming eyes would never again see dusk. To believe this story is to believe she still lingers, waiting, dreaming of the day her flame might be rekindled. There are others still who think her body lived, but her power did not, that Maliketh severed her from the black flame, stripping her of what made her terrible. Perhaps she wandered, diminished, forgotten, nameless, among the millions who dwelt in the lands between. Perhaps she became a shadow of herself, a woman carrying memories too heavy to bear. If this were true, then the queen may have walked unnoticed among her own ruins, a ghost of flesh rather than spirit. And then there is the theory that her fire did not end at all, but was passed on. For there is another figure in the tale of Elden Ring, one who stirs similar unease, a maiden named Melina. She appears from the mists, quiet, calm, her eyes sealed shut. She speaks of death, not with fear, but with familiarity. She offers to guide the tarnished, and in her words, there is a strange echo of the queen's certainty. Later, if the path of frenzied flame is taken, her hidden eye opens, and when it does, it glows with the violet light of Gloam, a twilight fire, uncanny and familiar. She too promises to deliver destined death, Is Melina the daughter of the Gloam-Eyed Queen? Is she the queen reborn, or is she a vessel carrying fragments of a will too strong to be entirely extinguished? The game does not say, it offers only suggestion, leaving us with questions whispered like prayers. The resemblance is uncanny, and the unease undeniable. Some go further, reaching across time and world to connect her to Velka, the goddess of sin from another age, another story. Velka too was bound to death and sin, a figure whose worship was hidden, whose name was spoken cautiously. To those who draw this thread, the Gloam-Eyed Queen is Velka reborn, or perhaps Velka by another name. It is speculation, yes, but speculation in Elden Ring is not without weight, for in this world, forgotten gods rarely stay forgotten forever. And then there are the voices that speak of outer gods, unseen forces beyond the Erd-tree, beings of hunger and will. Perhaps the Gloam-Eyed Queen was their vessel, chosen not by the two fingers, but by another hand. Perhaps her fall was not defeat, but withdrawal, her essence taken back into the gloaming itself, until the time is right to rise again. The lack of answers makes her all the more powerful. A figure fully explained becomes history. A figure left in shadow becomes myth. The Queen is myth. She is the whisper of endings in a world that denies them. She is the echo of twilight in a land bound to golden day. She is absence as much as presence, and that absence makes her eternal. Think of the effect this uncertainty has. To the faithful of the Erd-tree, she is a cautionary tale, a name to mutter only in warnings. To the remnants of her brood, she is still alive, still their mother, still guiding them in dreams. To the weary, who long for death's return, she is hope, proof that someone once dared to stand against immortality. Even the items that recall her bear this unease. The God-Slayer's great sword said to have been hers, rests sealed away, its black fire weakened but not gone. When wielded, it still burns with embers of death, proof that her flame lingers. The black flame incantations call upon her power, soft embers that remember her touch. To wield them is to carry fragments of her rebellion, even if one does not name her. Her legacy is not in monuments. It is in fragments, in robes of stitched skin, in fire that flickers unnaturally, in whispers past between shadows, in a maiden with a closed eye that opens to reveal gloam. And so the Queen lives on, not in body, not in tomb, but in theory. She is a canvas onto which the people of the lands between project their fears, their hopes, their doubts. Did she die? Did she linger? Did she return? No answer is given. Perhaps all are true, perhaps none, but the uncertainty ensures her presence remains. For in the end, her role was never about certainty, it was about inevitability. Death is inevitable, endings are inevitable, twilight is inevitable. Whether she lives or not, whether she waits or not, her truth remains. The day always yields to dusk, and dusk, patient and steady, always returns. Chapter 8. Themes of the Queen Sep's story. The tale of the Gloam-Eyed Queen is more than a fragment of history. It is a mirror, a parable, a whispered lesson carried on the dusk winds of the lands between. Her story is not remembered in golden scripture or etched into monuments. It survives in shadows, in the robes of her apostles, in the black fire that still smolders, in the unease that clings to the Erd-tree's roots, and it survives in the questions she leaves behind. At its heart, her tale is about balance. The Golden Order sought to build a world without endings. Marika's removal of destined death was a declaration that immortality could be law, that death itself could be denied. To many this was a blessing, to the faithful it was grace. Yet the Queen looked upon that same golden world and saw a wound, for in her eyes a cycle without endings is not balance at all. It is stagnation, it is silence, stretched too long. Her flame was born of this truth. The black flame did not burn wildly, it burned steadily, hungrily, consuming not only flesh, but the spirit of eternity itself. It reminded gods and mortals alike that endings cannot be erased. Her apostles embodied this reminder, their twisted forms, their grotesque rituals, their pale robes stitched with skin. All of it was a declaration that death persists, no matter how fiercely one tries to deny it. They carried her truth upon their bodies, living sermons sewn with needle and thread. There is horror in her story. Yes, the Godskins are terrifying to behold. Their rites are unsettling, their appearance grotesque, yet beneath the horror lies devotion, even tenderness. The Queen cradled them as a mother cradles her children. She wrapped them in swaddling cloth, whispering lullabies of endings. She gave them purpose when the Golden Order had left them wandering. What to some was monstrous was, to her brood, love. The paradox cannot be ignored. She was destroyer and nurturer both, offering belonging even as she led them towards slaughter. This paradox lies at the core of her legend. To the faithful of the Erd Tree, she was a heretic, a demon cloaked in twilight, leading monsters in mockery of divine order. To her apostles, she was salvation, proof that death was not gone, but waiting, ready to be restored. To those caught between, her story is more complex still. Was she villain or savior, monster or mother, heresy or truth? The answer may be all and none, for the Gloam-Eyed Queen is twilight given form, and twilight is never one thing. It is not day, nor is it night. It is the space between. It softens light, but it deepens shadow. It comforts, but it unsettles. It is transition, inevitability, the truth that nothing lasts forever. To live in the Queen's gaze was to live in that in-between, to feel both the terror of endings and the peace of release. Her battle with Maliketh carries this same weight. He was oath, she was inevitability. He was loyalty, she was truth. That their clash was not simply steel against steel, it was law against balance, permanence against dusk. Maliketh prevailed, but the very fact that she stood against him at all reveals the fragility of the Golden Order. Death may be sealed, but it waits. Endings may be chained, but chains rust. Twilight always returns, even if night does not fall immediately. And what of her fate? Here lies another theme, the power of mystery. If the Queen had died, her story would end in ashes. If she had triumphed, it would end in fire. But because her fate is unknown, her presence endures. She lingers not in flesh, but in imagination, in theories of imprisonment, of rebirth, of daughters who carry her flame. She becomes myth, and myths are harder to kill than bodies. She becomes symbol, and symbols do not fade so easily. Her legend also reveals the fragility of faith. The Golden Order declared itself unbreakable, eternal, absolute, and yet one woman, one queen with gloaming eyes, showed that eternity was a lie. The gods themselves trembled. Their worshippers whispered in doubt. Even after her defeat, unease remained, for if death could rise once, it could rise again. If gods could bleed once, they could bleed again. The queen left cracks in the golden facade, cracks that could never fully be sealed. In her we see the truth that even the greatest powers cannot erase what is natural. Death is not a curse. It is part of the whole. To deny it is to break the cycle. To restore it is not cruelty, but mercy. This was the queen's creed, though she wrapped it in fire and skin. This was her truth, whispered softly to her children, carved into the world with every strike of her great sword. And so when we reflect on her story, we are left not only with horror, but with strange comfort. The comfort that endings come, even to gods. The comfort that release is possible, even when denied. The comfort that cycles may falter, but they can never be destroyed. The gloaming carries this comfort. At sunset, day does not vanish at once. It lingers, softening, fading, easing into night. In that quiet light, there is peace. And in the queen's twilight eyes, there was that same peace, mingled with terror, mingled with inevitability. She was dusk, and dusk is always both. Her story ends, as all stories do, in silence. Yet it is a silence, heavy with presence. For when we look upon the black flame, when we see the pale robes of the Godskins, when we hear the name Melina whispered, we feel her shadow. She does not need to stand before us to be present. Twilight is always there, waiting, patient, certain. The queen who killed gods did not need to win to endure. Her legacy is not triumph or failure. It is reminder. Reminder that endings cannot be denied forever. Reminder that dusk always follows day. Reminder that even in the brightest golden age, shadows lengthen slowly, quietly, until the light is gone. And so her tale lingers, a parable in flesh and fire, a whisper carried on dusk winds, a lullaby of endings, sung softly across the lands between. Rest now, listener, for her story is not only hers, it belongs to all of us. For we too will one day close our eyes and step into gloaming, and in that twilight perhaps we will see her gaze, steady, certain, eternal, in its inevitability. And so the tale of the Gloam-Eyed Queen draws to its end, not in the way of endings that clang like steel or blaze like fire, but in the quiet manner of twilight itself, soft, inevitable, gentle as breath. We have wandered through her story together, through golden light and shadow, through flame and oath, through whispers and silence. We have seen the Erdtree's brilliance and the wound Morika carved into the world when she removed death. We have watched the queen rise, eyes glowing with gloam, carrying the black flame in her great sword. We have seen her gather her apostles, swaddled in skin, loved and feared in equal measure. We have followed her into temples and shrines, as gods fell screaming, their immortality undone. We have stood beside her as Maliketh came, shadow to shadow, and watched their clash shake the very order of the world, and we have lingered in the silence, after pondering her fate, wondering what truths remain hidden. Her story ends not with clarity, but with mystery, and in that mystery lies her power, for the queen is not confined to history. She does not live in books or stones. She lingers in the imagination, in whispers passed between shadows, in robes stitched from pale seams, in fire that burns darker than night, in a maiden with a sealed eye, glowing violet when it opens. Her absence is presence. Her silence is voice. She is both gone and here, both defeated and undefeated, both mother and monster, savior and heretic. She was the queen who killed gods, and gods, for all their grandeur, could not kill her memory. Her tale is a reminder that endings are not curses, but gifts. Without death, life is incomplete. That balance cannot be denied forever. The Golden Order may chain death, may seal it in shadow, may silence those who whisper otherwise, but twilight always returns, and with it comes truth. Perhaps that is why her legend lulls us like a lullaby. There is terror in it, yes, grotesque apostles, burning shrines, divine blood spilling in the dust, but there is peace too, the peace of inevitability, the peace of knowing that everything passes in time, the peace of dusk when the day exhales and the sky softens and the horizon tells us that rest is near. So let her story be your twilight. Let the black flame flicker softly in your mind as you drift. Let the image of her gloaming eyes settle into your thoughts, not as threat, but as comfort. She reminds us that nothing lasts forever, not fear, not struggle, not even wakefulness. The queen who killed gods has passed into myth. Her apostles still wander, but faintly, shadows of shadows. Her sword is sealed, but it waits. Her fate is unknown, but her truth is certain. All things end, all fires fade, all days turn to night, and in that ending, there is peace. So close your eyes now, breathe softly, and rest. Let her story settle over you like dusk over the horizon. Let it carry you gently towards sleep. For the gloam is patient, the gloam is steady, the gloam waits for all things. And now it waits for you.